Are you good? Good. You guys can like work on that in your own time, right?
I'm gonna break the session.
Breakout session.
It's the law.
Oh my God.
Which room?
357.
357.
I feel like this should be a more of a round.
Campfire.
Yeah, but we'll do it this way for now. I'm also
You can sit in front of the table.
my desire to reconfigure the room is not being overcome by my inherent laziness on a Sunday. So pretend it's a campfire session. So it's I think right. I mean,
Sure.
It should just be a talk, like conversation. I think right.
Yeah. So 10 years of PodCamp.
Yeah.
How did it start, Jay?
So I took a car ride with a lady named Lisa Barnes to Boston, to Bunker Hill Community College, for the very first PodCamp where I acquired this shirt, which is now fraying at the neck and other areas. And we were at the first PodCamp, and it was a really cool, awesome experience. And I did want to make a point, which was that it was preceded by Podcasters Across Borders, and I want to make that point, not just to kiss Bob's behind, but because that I feel like that's part of the whole, even though it's not formally a PodCamp per se, it's part of the kind of bigger community. And a lot of the people, you guys came down to Boston, and a lot of the same folks from PAB, and I do feel like that sort of Canadian nexus of people that met at PAB and were connected through that went down to Boston, and that kind of caused a lot of this in some way. So, the first PodCamp was sort of the start of it, but I feel like Podcasters Across Borders was also part of that. So we went, we had fun. Jeff Pulver, who was the guy who co-founded Vonage, bought drinks for everyone.
Many drinks.
And yeah, that was messy, but great. And that started the tradition of drinking a lot at PodCamp also, which is very important. And then we came back, and then the very specific moment, and I think I would say there's origin myths and stories, and I think something like this probably would have happened one way or another. But I know the moment that it started, which was when Lisa on her podcast interviewed a guy named Brian Person, who is one of the guys who doesn't get a lot of credit, and there was a whole team of people. So Chris Penn and Chris Brogan are the guys who get kind of the big credit for starting PodCamp, and rightly so. But they had a team too. They had a bunch of people, and one of them was a guy named Brian Person, great guy, a podcaster, a guy that I've worked with a little bit, and he was being interviewed by Lisa on Lisa's podcast. And the exchange went something like this. Lisa said something like, "Brian, we had a great time at PodCamp. Are you guys going to do that again in Boston?" And he goes, "Why don't you guys do it in Toronto?" And she went, "Ding." And she sent out an email, and that went to a group of us Toronto podcast people and said, "Hey, we should do this." And a few people responded. So Brandon's not here. I thought he was going to be here. But Brandon responded, I responded, and a few other people responded to say, "That sounds like fun." So then we had to find a place. And this is the one thing I will take full credit for, which was I said, why don't we do it at my alma mater, at Ryerson? And why don't we do it at the Roger Kincaid Center where I went to school? Because I know all the people there, and it's a cool room, and they'll like that. And so I called my friend Brad Fortner, who was at that time the manager of the facility here, and said, "Brad, we want to do this thing." He's like, "Right on. Bring it on. Come on up." So that's how it started. And we said, how about, it's Toronto. Why not February? Because I just called you out and you weren't here.
I'm sorry.
He pointed out to me earlier, he was the first person to respond to Lisa's email, and I was the second. So he's as responsible, if not more so.
Yeah, but his message said first. I'm that guy.
I'm sure it did. And that's how it began. And it was the original, I guess, organizing committee was you, me, Lisa, Mitch, and Julian?
Yes.
And was that everybody?
Yeah, I think so.
So yeah, and so Mitch, Julian, and Julian, who are actually from Montreal, pitched in, and they did more from afar. But when they got here, they actually pitched in a lot. Julian put a lot of stuff in his credit card. that was actually Julian's big contribution. It took him years to get some of that money back, I think.
We did finally pay him back though.
I know. Yeah, and that's funny, right? Because when Rob came on, you had to figure out how we were going to pay him back eventually, right? And you closed the loop on that. So that's how it began, and we had, I want to say we had 300-ish people.
I feel like it was 400.
Was that many?
I think so.
Damn.
Yeah.
We did okay.
Yeah.
And as you did at a PodCamp, then we just started a wiki page, and people came on the wiki page and put their names on it, and we did that for a few years.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about the wiki probably later, right?
Sure.
But that's how it started. So and it looked very much like it looks now. It was although not as nice signage, not as nice shirts. We didn't have most of that stuff, but really the sessions, like you could have walked. We could drop you into one of those sessions now. And the big difference would be people would have laptops rather than smartphones, and everything else would look the same. So that was the start.
And you were doing this for what, 3 years?
I was on the organizing committee, and I was kind of. I feel like Lisa was sort of the lead in the first year, but I was sort of co-lead in a way, and then I was sort of lead-ish guy, mainly because of the Ryerson relationship, for the first 3 years. And then I got angry, but we can talk more about that later.
Just don't get him angry. Yeah.
Don't get angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. Yeah, that's how it started.
And then you
Yeah.
stepped in.
Well, yeah, I had a nominal role in that first year in the sense that I think it was me and duct tape guy Sean McGahey and I decided that they don't have a blog. How can these guys not have any social media for this PodCamp? So
we forgot about that.
So we said, well, we can do this. We can pitch it. So the two of us took on the blogging, and that was kind of fun. I don't even remember what we blogged about. I think we blogged about like, don't forget your business card or something, like things to do when you got at PodCamp. I don't know. So that was sort of the nominal role, and then after that, when the next year, it's like, well, are we going to keep this going? Stepped up and said, okay, let's help Jay and Eden as well, Spodek, and I think Rob.
I just saw her. She's
Yeah.
just, I was trying to.
Yeah.
I'm giving her the evil eye, but she's
Yeah,
not. She's
we'll
not.
have to
She's
go
not.
and get her.
It's not working.
And Rob, did you get involved that second year as well?
It was the second or the third year? I
Yeah.
don't remember.
Yeah.
It's all a blur.
I know.
Yeah. I feel like second year was
Yeah.
Yumi, Eden, Dave Fleet,
Yeah.
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 and
It's kind of hard to remember who all. Yeah.
someone else.
Yeah.
Somebody was.
And,
Were you sure you weren't? Because somebody was doing money. I wasn't doing the money. God.
I think Lisa was doing the money for the first couple of years.
No, she only did.
Just
Lisa
first
really
year.
was only.
She had the bank account was her name, wasn't her name. I know that.
Yeah, maybe nobody was doing the money in the second year. That could have been possible.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and it was a lot of like getting Jay's philosophy on it, and then actioning it,
philosophy.
making it happen. Come on in,
My
come on in.
philosophy. We'll
He
talk.
was talking about.
We should talk about the. We'll talk about the philosophy
Yeah.
part of it. 'Cause
But,
that's interesting.
Himmy had a question.
Yeah.
Just a tiny footnote, and you shoot your
Yeah.
horn when you do. The first year I set up the Flickr group,
Oh, okay.
then Chris Brogan said, "That's great, but all you people are posting the images.
Oh, yeah, I
under
remember
your
that.
Copyright."
That's
So then we put a request. It just
right.
if you're uploading to the Flickr group,
Yeah.
please make all your photos CCA, Creative Commons
Yeah.
Attribution.
Okay.
So I did that, and then everyone who had contributed
Yeah.
a photograph, I just made them co-administrators of the Flickr
Yeah.
account, and I left it. And
Okay.
it just is what it is.
Yeah.
So that was that first little interaction that I had with Chris Brogan, and it was like, that's right, here we're talking this stuff, and we're
Yeah.
still trying to keep copyright, right?
Yeah.
But see, that's a great story because I don't think I would
Didn't
know.
know
But I remember Brogan's email, but I would honestly I wouldn't have remembered you set it up.
Yeah.
But now you said that, I'm like, oh yeah. But that's how a lot of this stuff happened early on. Is people just picked up and did stuff.
Yeah.
You guys just started doing the blog, and I had honestly forgotten that too. But
Yeah.
but you didn't have to be asked. You
Yeah.
just did it. You didn't have to be asked to set up a Flickr group. You just did it. And I think that was if there's a philosophy, there's anything behind it. I mean, to me, that's it. Is people just picked up and did stuff.
And that was the whole thing behind PodCamp at the time too, right?
Yeah.
Like, remember Boston, like, we're all in this, like, where they shot Goodwill Hunting. We're all in this auditorium. and Brogan and Penn are, explaining what PodCamp is. This is the very first PodCamp, and they're in the opening session. And one thing they did was say, we just happened to get all the rooms.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is, and it sounds cliche, this is your event. And then, but he says, if you're walking somewhere and you see a piece of paper on the floor or a ball, pick it up and put it in the garbage.
Yeah.
And so that instilled, I think, early on that sense of, well, everybody's part of this, and,
Yes.
and do that. And we saw that in Montreal, the same kind of approach too. And
Yes.
they,
Yes.
and I think that's faded over the years. There's more of an organizer versus
Yes.
attendee. But I don't know. I mean,
For sure, though, when, and also, I should just mention too, like even we were just talking about, and
We would call,
Catherine's here
we
as
call,
well.
you know, it's like we call them and they appear. We should just name
Yeah.
names and see people walk in.
That
Mitch
happened
Joel.
that happened at our session where we were talking about you and then magically.
Yeah.
We did that, actually, PodCamp, I can't remember which year it was, maybe year 4, we had 1,200 people here, and we gave that talk at the beginning. It was hard because we couldn't fit everyone in the same space, but we actually had a little write-up first, a blog post, and I think we might have emailed it out to everybody, and then we also verbally said it, and we gave that little speechifying was just, this is your event, it is what you make it, and you also have to help us take care of the space.
Yeah.
And it was like, I don't think we had any cups sitting around, and I mean, we might have had a few, but it was amazing.
Yeah.
And people pitched in and helped clean up the chairs, and I mean, we might have had to encourage the odd person, but it was, you would think 1,200 people, that they would have just come and gone and not cared, and my perception was that it was actually went that way. So yeah, even though it's something that shouldn't scale theoretically, we somehow did, and
Well, and actually, just to step a little back to year 3, my frustration in basically, and actually Connie was saying this last night, it's basically like, you know, the concern leading up to that is Jay gonna hold his shit together, you know, for the first day, or is he just gonna lose it and start smacking people around? And I seriously considered not coming on the Saturday, because and the reason was because I felt like in the kind of back channel, Twitter, whatever world, people were like bitching about stuff that hadn't happened yet, and they were like, the rooms are going to be too full, and this is going to be too that, and the blah blah blah. And that was why I was angry. And I was angry because I'm like, people, just come and deal with it. And actually, Rob and I were talking about this, and I was going back through some of the old emails, and Rob sent a message out, and it had a calming effect on me, which was to say, guys, let's just chill out. Let's just see what happens. And I basically said, yeah, that's what we should do. And it did work out. People did.
Jay actually did chill out.
And I did chill. And I did. Yeah, this is me chilled out, by the way. And I.
2 years later, he got it.
Yeah. But we did that in year 3 as well, where I stood up on the stairs and I gave that sort of speech to say, you know, bathrooms are over there. You know, if garbage is on the ground, please pick it up. And if you don't like a session, law of 2 feet, and have a good time and enjoy yourself. And if you're not enjoying yourself, go home. Because that is the other thing, right? The law of 2 feet doesn't just apply to sessions; it applies to the whole thing. If you're here and you're not, you know, you're not getting it, you know, like, come on. And I would rather see and I mean, this is where PodCamp started to get weird for me, was that it started to seem to be about the numbers of people. And I'm like, you know, and in Boston too, they kind of did this, where they said, everybody sign up and everybody come. And a lot of people didn't come, and everybody seemed to be upset that they didn't get 1,000 people there. They only had 350 or 400. And I'm like, that sounds like a good number to me. Like, I don't know why you need 1,000 people. Like, who cares?
In the 3rd year, they actually charged $20.
And then they started charging money, right? And that actually kind of peeved me off a little bit, because that was part of the philosophy that I liked, was the free idea, was show up and you pay with your participation. You know, we're not hiring staff to move chairs. You're moving the chairs. We're not hiring speakers. You're the speakers. I love that.
The only reason they did that was so that people who signed up felt more committed, and they gave everyone a T-shirt and stuff like that. But yeah.
But my thing has always been, but who gives a crap?
Yeah.
Who gives a crap if 10,000 people show up and 10,000 people sign up and 50
But you
show
know
up?
what happens is that, like you guys here, what you have in Toronto, and first of all, this place, right? I mean, forget it. You're not going to find a better locale to do a PodCamp event. But other places, like, you know, like Boston had to rent that university. Montreal, we had to rent the facilities there. And so what you do is you start laying out cash.
Yeah.
Once you start laying out cash, you need more sponsors.
Yeah.
What do sponsors want? Sponsors want numbers. And that was the creep in of measurement into PodCamp, right?
Yeah.
Remember
Yes.
what we call the dark years, like, 2009, 2013, where it was just about marketing?
Yes.
Well, it was that.
Those are the years I didn't really come.
Well, but like, that's how measurement crept in.
Yes, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say those are the years where like there's a mood shift where people aren't just picking up chairs. Like we have to get more
Yeah.
volunteers dedicated to do these things that people just did freely on
Yeah.
their own.
Yeah.
Well, and
It's
we
part
should,
of attendance.
so we should shift to kind of, what I think of as sort of the John years, which is when it's sort of going from, going from me being involved, and really there was actually no crossover in us being organizers together. So you were,
Yeah.
I think like there was sort of
I
my
worked with
time and there was sort of
both of
John's
you.
time, and there Connie was the bridge between it. That's sort of how I feel about it.
Yeah, well, it was very collaborative. It was
Yeah.
Connie, Eden, and Rob, the three of us together.
Yeah.
Tried to fill Jay's shoes, essentially.
How hard could that have been?
I don't know what we wanted to fill them with.
That's the real question. Rice, cheese, anything, right? Would work.
Also, during those years, there were a lot of other conferences and unconferences right across the board throughout the year.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's something like that culture,
Yeah.
those other people came in, and it's like this, so like the benchmarks,
Yeah.
suddenly standards, and it sort of lost PodCamp, and it just became the unconference on that weekend in February.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, and then social media
Yeah.
week was during a few years. They
Yeah.
had it the same weekend
Yeah.
as this, so like
So just another.
it's all marketing horseshit.
And there was a
That does filter those people out of this event, though, so that was nice.
Guys,
Not really. I mean,
I think you have
Yeah.
to remember before, and I'm not a marketer, although I get labeled with
Ha!
marketer PR. I think you have to realize what's Miss Jewel, what's Chris Penn doing
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
what's Brogan doing. These people
I am
who
too, actually.
started this, they're all in that business. So don't diss the market, don't diss anybody. We're all part of PodCamp. They're also early adopter podcasters and social media users. So
And I'll say this as being a marketer,
Yeah.
it is that it shouldn't. There's a place absolutely for it, and the people who are interested in a lot of the early adopters, a lot of people who have been innovators in this space and have been leaders in this space are absolutely marketers, but it shouldn't be about marketing to each other in this environment.
Yeah.
I think that's where it
Yeah,
falls down.
it became a sales pitch. For
That's
a lot
where
of
it
these
falls
sessions.
down.
It was a sales
Yeah, a lot of
pitch.
them were people just selling their
Books or
their
like
book or
their
their
consulting
website
services.
and it
Like
was like,
it just
don't come
became-
here for you to shield me, I'm
They
here to
were
learn.
supposed to, like, I know until, I can't speak from after 2012 or 2013.
Yeah.
But we were, as much as there were a lot of sponsors or whatever, it was made very clear to them, whether they
Mhm.
followed or not, I can't speak to, they weren't allowed to do that in order to be part of it as a sponsor, and people came to us and said, this is what we wanna do. We spent, pushed back like crazy.
Yeah.
Not to
Yeah.
allow that.
And to be fair, like, if somebody came and did a session and you thought, oh, this sounds really good, and you get in the room and they're just pitching something to you, I mean, that's where the law two thing
Right,
come
yeah.
in, and basically, everybody should get up and leave. If
Right.
that's the case, right, and leave them without an audience, like that's, if people are offended, if you wanna hear the pitch, then that's great, all the more power to you, but that's sort of where that control is. Now, the challenge is empowering people to feel like you can. We're such polite Canadians. that
That's-
we
I was
feel
just
like
gonna
you
say
have to
that.
be- Have to be stuck in a room, or there's been situations where the room has been packed with people, and you're the person way at the back and to get out.
You can't get out.
Yeah, so that in practical terms, it doesn't always work, but that's the theory, is that people can get up.
We need to go all William Shatner Canadian, just dramatically leave rooms. Done.
We should all be doing that, absolutely.
I'm using the law of
From now on, yes.
This is my first PodCamp.
Okay.
I'm from Niagara, but the one thing that struck me when I got here was it felt very similar to the Drupal camps that I
Sure.
went to all over the place, and they've had similar challenges when they're as they're growing up, and so but there's been two sort of things that have happened. So some of the events have started to scale up, and you do see some of these things where it becomes more polished, it becomes a little more marketing focused. Again, it's larger, you need more resources in order to make it happen. But then the other part is a horizontal scaling where we had a bunch of us in Niagara go to the Toronto Drupal camp. We love it, and we're like, oh, we can do that here. So we get together with the Western New York guys, and we put together an event. We also start doing our own meetups locally. and and it grows from there. So, and coming here, I'm like, oh my God, we can do an event, and we've got one in the works now.
Good.
So, I'll share something I like later. But the point is, I think that you can have that. I think it's okay that some of these events start to vertically scale, as long as you're encouraging that horizontal scaling as well.
And for sure, we've seen that. So, did you
I
have?
was gonna say, I mean, let's date ourselves and go back 10, 12 years when there was PodCamp Ottawa, PodCamp Montreal, PodCamp Niagara, PodCamp London.
I really feel like in 2000, I feel like in 2008 there was almost a PodCamp every weekend.
Yeah.
I really feel that, and I would be curious now to go back and look at the wiki. You could probably figure it out, but I really feel like there were 50 PodCamps in 2008.
So it's
I think there was one in
interesting that this
Hamilton.
is coming around again, like, we should be spreading out.
Eden and I even went to the first PodCamp in Halifax.
Ottawa, Halifax, yeah.
But Ottawa,
Copenhagen, I mean, they were all over, right?
Yeah,
So-
this was an international movement. It
So do
wasn't
we know?
just-
Do we know? Like those don't seem to have continued.
Halifax is the only one in Canada that I
In
know of that
Canada?
still continues.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
couple in the United States. There's
Yeah.
a lot in developing countries now, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's another PodCamp happening this weekend in a country I can't read the language, so I don't know where they are. Is showing up in our feeds as well now.
There is a wiki that's everybody's supposed to post their events when they're happening. Now they fall out of doing it. I've been one of the people who keeps it up to date sometimes if I think about it.
But have you tried to edit it lately?
No,
You can't edit it.
Oh, really?
You can't get an account. I requested a couple times to get an account. I don't know who's maintaining that.
Oh, okay.
But Miroslav, yeah, tell me.
I attend.
Yeah. Sorry.
I feed you, remember?
Yeah, I know. Go ahead.
I attend WordCamp Toronto that was Andy McIvan that spoke is one of the co-organizers. A lot of the WordPress, WordCamp conferences, the speakers, it's all about them instead of a topic. It's a different. Oh, look at me, get my services, blah blah blah. Instead of talking about the topic, notice unless I'm very selective of the sessions. They're actually about the topic they're talking, not about them selling their book, they're selling their service. I don't have a book, I'm too lazy if anybody wants to write a book for me. But this is what I like about PodCamp Toronto. It's more about the topics of somebody selling their book, selling their the service. I know where to get web hosting, I know where to get, I get ebooks, I know where to get all this stuff, but the topics, if it's a marketing, somebody in WordPress, they're going to sell their marketing book.
And we try and make it very clear to people who want to present and people who we approach to present, like, this is not a sales pitch. If you start doing a sales pitch, people will not be happy with you and they will leave the room. Like, we try and make it very clear, do not be pitching.
Yeah.
There's a
And the audience should know that they should leave the room.
Yeah.
That's the other part of that equation, right?
Yeah.
There is a difference between them say, oh, my website, this is my social media, whatever.
Yeah, there's a big difference between.
This is my book.com, marketingbook.com.
Can I share a little anecdote?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so on the way here, I was on the subway listening to a new podcast by BetaKit, which is about the Canadian tech scene. I got 10 minutes in. And the interesting thing is they were talking about an article, a blog post that was written by a woman from Ottawa named Erin Belaski. And Erin Burry was quoting her about saying, with Twitter's new, you'll see where I'm coming back to PodCamp, with Twitter's new algorithm being predominant as opposed to Twitter, how we see it in the order that we want to see, and Twitter's trying to shove this stuff. It's not Twitter's problem, it's our problem, because the way the early adopters used to use Twitter was for conversation and talking about, interesting things and sharing, and now it's all self-promotion. Interestingly enough, I think most of us in this room who have been around for a while learned about Twitter at this very place, and I think in this very room at the first PodCamp Toronto. So when you talk about the differences between PodCamp and other events, and then I heard this new podcast that I think is 3 episodes in, it's just a very interesting analogy that ties back.
Did you feel old when you heard those early Twitter adopters, those ancient people?
Those early Twitter adopters being this really special group of digital experimenters.
Oh yeah, we were special. but that's Yeah, well, and you know what? Like, you can't go home again, right? I mean, and actually, so that's not to pitch my app, but I mean, part of the reason that I wanted to come here and be a sponsor as well is because partly it was remembering the old days when anybody would try anything, and it's been a little. I'm not bitching about it, but I'm saying it's been a little more tough this year, and I get it. You know, people come up to me and they're like, "Well, my phone, like literally, my phone is full of apps. I don't have room for yours." And we, you know, like those weren't the kind of problems that we had 10 years ago, right? Like everybody was like looking for the thing, or would at least give the new thing. And we tried a lot of crazy crap. Like we were listing off yesterday. You know, there was Jaiku and Plurk and Pounce and Utters. I used to utter. I'd utter all the time. And you guys, at half of you are going, what the crap is he talking about? Uvu. Oh yeah, Uvu.
Utter's a cow.
Yeah, the little cow. Utters, and then they changed it to utterly.
Yeah.
And then they just disappeared. And I mean, but that was the world, right? It was just like, and who knew? And Twitter was just another thing.
Yep.
And who knew it was going to be what it was? And you know, and now I feel like people are probably a little more jaded about it, and rightly so in a way, because there's a trillion zillion apps, and I mean, I'm selling an app too, so.
There's that Elo thing that came out last year, and I remember for 24 hours I was excited about it, signed up and made up a couple posts, and I have not touched it ever
Right.
since.
But yeah,
It's
like
just,
Peach, like 2 weeks ago.
God, I didn't heard of that.
Yeah, Peach is like the same sort of thing as Elo. It's like
We're trying to figure out what the hell we do with Peach. I have no idea. It's dead now.
But that's the thing, right? You give it a week, and you don't figure it out. It's like, well, you move on to the next thing because there's a million other things, right?
Yeah.
And before, like, I had a Twitter account for ages before I really figured out what to do with it, and it was kind of going to camps and seeing things, and then South by came, and that kind of took off. And it's like, okay, this is what it's about. But I think I had 2 tweets in the first 3 months that I had my Twitter account because I didn't know what the fuck it was about. And then I started to see it, but I sat on it and I kept kind of coming back to say, well, what the hell's going on with this? Wouldn't do that now. If I haven't looked at an app in my phone for 10 minutes, I'd probably go leave to get install the next app.
If there's not a community there to converse with you, that's what's happening with Peach. Peach has some really cool features, but it's a ghost town.
Yeah. I want to bring back more directly to PodCamp and to kind of now, and actually, John and I started talking yesterday, and I think this is, and this, I want to connect this with Bob's point about, so part of, I think, why we've been blessed in Toronto is because partly this building, definitely the community, definitely John and the people who have taken it on after the rest of us have gone. So, you know, full credit to John and Rick and Lily and the folks who are still running the SAM, and that's a huge part of the reason that this is still in Toronto and it's not in a lot of other places. So that's, you know, full on credit to you guys for that. But the other thing we should talk about is, so how do we go forward from here? Because now the challenge, and you know, we just started talking about this, right? So I know you guys lost Rogers as a sponsor, who were a sponsor.
They laid off their entire social media team, so there was no one to even talk to.
They were laid off. They did their job.
Well, they
were repositioned.
They repositioned, right? But the focus is changing in corporate around that stuff, and that's not that. Again, we're not going back to that world where people have social media teams, right? And you know what? Kind of rightly so. Like, let's be honest, right? Social media shouldn't be a thing off in a room. It should be part of the larger practice. So what you're not going to see, I think, is social media teams who are going to come to social media events and talk about social media with social media people. Those days are over, I think. Right? So what is the next thing, right? And how do we move forward to this? So
yeah, so like a big issue is funding for sure.
Yeah.
You can see everyone's face.
Wow.
I think that was our biggest year for a team, right? Or maybe 2011.
12, 11? Look at all these.
No, 10 was the biggest year.
Wow.
Holy crap!
Wow. That's great. Wow.
14.
Look at all these people. I remember some of these people. Oh. Is that, are we,
No.
Did we say?
I like your background.
Did we say the password? Did we win something?
Yeah, so like, I mean, the biggest thing is funding it. Like, we have the space, we have people coming out, we have people submitting sessions. We've sort of figured out how the whole session thing works now, because one of the things we did when we first took over was like, okay, there's going to be, you know, we have this many rooms, we're going to dedicate X amount of space for each category, so that there's like an even content. And now the challenge is, you know, funding. Like, it's like 20K that we sort of need
So
to get this running.
I
We
would
made
say-
like 8K this year.
So I would say you go back to the basic principles. You know, you spend what you have. If you don't get the funding, then you just scale it back to whatever. Like, you know, pub night becomes
you actually pay for your own drinks?
pay for your own drinks, pay for your own food, right? You book the space or
I don't know
whatever.
about
I know it's a challenge. You know, you also see the numbers come and go. You have fewer people. You could probably run fewer sessions as well. Then the rooms are fuller. I mean, your philosophy was always you'd rather have the room a little too small and have people packed into the room than to have empty rooms.
Absolutely.
It increases the enthusiasm and
we got a lot of feedback about the rooms being too full at certain points, so we started trying to
and there's a balance.
accommodate, and now
so
they're getting too empty now, so it's time to retract.
But I think the numbers, like I run a conference for a professional association I've been involved in, and we'd be happy with these numbers of people, 300, you know, however many, 350 people or however many are here. Like, we would be delighted to have this many. And so I don't think that it's that you have too few people. One of the principles is one of the principles is whoever shows up are the right people. So as long as there are people showing up, I think that's great. And you just, you know, you can add on the luxury items, you know, so-called luxury items, or the things that you need when you do have big crowds. You maybe don't need as much stuff when you have fewer people showing up.
And that's the only reason we scaled up is because we had the money. We had to do something with it.
Well, we had to accommodate the larger groups of people.
We had to, but we also had money, so we're like, oh, let's make a party.
They went hand in hand.
Also, there's a lot of tools, you know, out there for you know, podcasters that, you know, they're not represented, you know, in the sponsors list, and I know how much time goes into contacting them. So it's not a criticism.
We do contact tons of people, like probably 100 people every year. They do not care.
Everybody's
it's an event of 1,000 people means nothing to a corporation or a small company, and it's a free event. So also they don't like that because it doesn't qualify people as having money. I've heard that a couple times this year. Like, it's free, so we don't know that these people have money.
And it means your attendance numbers are looser. Because if you know 1,000 people register for a paid event, probably 800, 900 people are going to show up. If you know 1,000 people register for a free event, you're lucky if you get 500. And that's across the board. That's you know, I do a lot of events now with what I'm doing, and that's how it is. So we always say, oh yeah, it's a free event. We don't want to do that. So it happens.
And that was sort of my next point, is that if you know, whoever pays basically gets to, you know, they at least get a say in the conversation of how things are structured. So why aren't participants paying?
Well, I think there's two things there. One is that they do get a say, but they don't get to sell. And that is different than some, like if you pay enough at a conference, you can do a sales pitch, essentially, at like a lot of conferences, right? Or do at least a sponsored room, or do something that's more salesy. And here, you can't and probably shouldn't do that, or if you do, you're going to get...
Same with the Drupal camp.
Right, and that's part of it. But I do think the other part of it is this numbers game that is... Again, I'm not trying to whine or anything, but I mean, I got numbers I got to meet for a quarter right now, and you know, coming to PodCamp, I was hoping I get a few more numbers. Like, I'm not going to cry about it, but it's if I had done this sort of without all the rest of the relationship and stuff that I have here, I'd be a little pissed off with the numbers that I've got this weekend, because not as many people are stepping up to not only care, because it's, you know, PodCamp, I love you guys, but that is, if they don't already love us, then that's going to be a thing. I wanted to actually say something about the whole thing of extras and that, and I think, Brent, you were telling me a story at some PodCamp, somebody got up and said, I just came for the free t-shirt or something.
Oh yeah, last year at the wrap up, there was a guy complaining about lack of t-shirts.
And I want to say publicly, fuck that guy. That guy is not the guy that should be at PodCamp. No, I mean, really.
And last night at the bar, we were sitting right by a bunch of people, and they were like, oh, there's not enough food. I'm not going to come tomorrow if they don't give us enough food. And it's like, fuck you, get out.
But see, that's
like right at 6 o'clock.
Come on.
It's like, get out then, leave.
Although there was one little thing, which is you couldn't order other food there. So if you were hungry, I kind of get that, because I actually did go out and get a sandwich. But still.
But that's the loyalty fee. You got on your own TV.
That's right, exactly. That's right, exactly. Yes,
but that's the way to tell those people to fuck off before they piss you off. That's the key, right? Like before you're angry, like that filter is
Yes,
somehow.
you're right. You're right.
And that's the, so again, first year at PodCamp, you know, I've known about it for like the last 3 years, you know, couldn't make it, finally got a chance to make it this year, blown away by it. But one of the things that I was most blown away about is how generous this is, right? Absolutely free, you know, then free drinks, free food, it's, you know, also the night at the Imperial Pub, oh my god, it was awesome. But it's, you guys are giving away too much.
So,
Right?
so here's the thing, and this is actually, I was hoping Jay would talk about it, because it came back to what we always went by was, the moment you charge, and even if you charge $10 for nominal fee, people start to expect stuff. And whatever you give them is not gonna be enough. So, you know, we're not feeding you, we're not giving you a t-shirt.
They're saying that while it's free still, so imagine if they're paying for it. Like, they're gonna rake you over the coals.
That's sort of always what I went, I also run a meetup group, and we started off having it free, and it was the same sort of thing. People would sign up and then hardly anyone would show up. So we put in place $10 of meetup, and now we know the people who paid for it pretty much are gonna show up. And so there is that philosophy, but we got to know, like, there is a certain attrition rate. You get so many people, you know, if you have 800 people sign up, you figure you're gonna get probably 500 show up at this. And we sort of got to know that, so it wasn't so much that we needed those numbers, but it was that expectation setting.
So Miroslav and then Eden, but I want to just call Bill in London. They charged $2. And it was, and we were talking about this, and it was like $2 is nothing to, like, everybody can afford $2. But the whole thing was, and you even did a freebie code.
I put it in PodCamp.
That was awesome.
It was a coupon code to be free. So like anybody who's like, because we had a bunch of people complaining, I don't have a credit card.
Right.
Well, just use this coupon code, and you don't need a credit card anymore. It's free. And a bunch of people guessed the coupon code. But the thing is, like, if somebody who's going to guess the coupon, if somebody's going to spend the time to try to guess the coupon code, he's actually going to show up.
Probably going to show up.
And again, I had a lot of people complaining because we did it for free for 2 years and then charged the third year because we were having that problem. We were holding the event at a place where there wasn't food within, like it was a 10-minute drive for food, so we had to provide food. And we had sponsors that were going to do that, but we really needed to have a pretty close idea of how many people were going to show up. Because food was an issue. So that's where the third year we went. I said, like, the first year was downtown, so that wasn't a problem. But the third year was where, like, also you kind of get popular enough where people know you and you get a lot of people coming. So I had a lot of people pissed off that we're charging now, like all of a sudden you're charging. And I said, for starters, like, use this coupon code. And people were like accusing me of trying to profit from it. I'm like, do you $2? I'm like, no, do you understand? Like, I mean, I don't know how many people have done online transactions, but do you know what you get out of $2? Like, literally 30 cents. In the process of $2 transaction. Like, it really wasn't making money. Like, we weren't able to buy coffee in the morning with the money we made on registration.
It wasn't for that.
So it really was just that kind of really low barrier, and it worked perfectly. And nobody complained. I actually walked around most of the day with a pocket full of toonies, so if I made a complaint, I just have the money. That's my attitude too.
Miroslav's been waiting patiently.
The average WordCamp event is $35. You get a shirt, you get lunch. In average WordCamp Toronto, 1 year they had no t-shirts. Twitter turned into a bitch fest, pardon my language. It's like, I refused. That was the only year I didn't attend because people would bitch and bitch and bitch. No t-shirt. I have 1,000 t-shirts of conferences because that's the ones I attend. But a lot of these technology conferences are $1,000, $800. All the business conferences, even $35 is nothing. You know, getting free, getting the coffee, you know. When the organizers here come at way earlier, 6, 7, 8, whatever. In WordCamp Toronto, I am there at 7 in the morning. I'm volunteering my time. There's still no coffee until about 10 in the morning. So 3 hours. The advantage of WordCamp in the Humber College Lakeshore campus, there's Tim Hortons right across the building that's open 24 hours for the students. You know, but there are a lot of conferences who charge you $1,000 and still don't give you things, and people still complain. No matter what you give them, there's still something that's going to turn into a bitch fest. You know?
That's the answer, though. I think you cannot please everyone.
Well, absolutely.
That's amazing.
Absolutely. Eating's been waiting as well.
I have a really weird thing, and I didn't sleep last night, so forgive me, but I'm just trying to think of something that might help to sustain PodCamp, because even if it's free, there's still operating costs. And it seems like the day of big sponsorship dollars or even medium sponsorship dollars, they were never huge, but they were big for PodCamp, are gone because we've evolved our dollar. You know, the world is different today.
Yeah, there's no ROI on sponsoring PodCamp.
Yeah.
There's kind of two types of people who would like these kind of things from a presenter type of thing, and I'm just trying to think of the world that's out there. There are a lot of people now putting on paid workshops, right? And a lot of them don't necessarily have the infrastructure to attract an audience or to get space easily without overhead, and they would love access to this audience. So what if you ran sort of like a parallel event where at the same time as PodCamp Toronto, it's kind of these PodCamp Toronto workshops where the workshop organizers are paying to have a spot, people pay to attend the workshops, but there's a whole series of free events that are the regular PodCamp events, and they're happening in parallel.
Yeah,
so you can generate revenue.
Yeah.
That was something we talked about this year, actually.
The people who want to sell can sell, and it helps offset the cost.
Did we talk about that with Mitch in like 2008? I feel like we had that conversation.
I don't remember.
I feel like we had that conversation, you, me, and Mitch. That exact conversation.
This is happening with Drupal. So the Drupal cons, like the day before the conference.
Yeah.
It's a workshop track.
Yeah, we talked about that pretty extensively this year about doing something separate for just like a sponsored stream, because we're not allowed to have paid, like everyone is supposed to be equal, so how are we going to put like a guaranteed session for a presenter in a room? While if it was a separate event, then how do we do that? Because we had a lot of requests for sponsors to be speakers, if they would give it on the condition they were giving money. So
what if we made it clear and we had a sponsor session track?
Yeah, so that's what we talked about doing. The challenge then becomes like, how do you message that's being not part of PodCamp, but part of PodCamp?
Well, they did it. Social Capital in Ottawa used to do it. They tried it. I was there 3 years ago, and they had before Social Capital, the day before, they had a day of workshops. And so it was positioned differently. You did pay separately to attend the workshops. You either could pay a flat rate and go to X number, or you paid for the workshop. So it's something that you might want to think about if we're going to help generate the revenue. You're going to help those people who want to sell their books. You're going to help those people who want to do paid workshops privately, but they can at least get an entree here to this audience and get some buzz. It might be worth experimenting on a small scale.
Yeah, it's definitely something we'll be looking to next year to get sponsors.
And I like now that you've got the free registration, but you also have options that people can pay a bit and get something, but presumably that's going into helping. How is that working?
It's worked out all right. We sold, I think we've sold almost all the t-shirts. We sold all the patches. There was an option just to donate and get nothing. I think like 12 people chose that option.
Oh wow! Okay.
So and then the rest was.
I took the t-shirt down.
And then it was like
that's why I come to PodCamp.
So it works out well. It doesn't generate
very much.
Like maybe $1,000 is what we'll net from it.
Okay. That's not bad.
So I know some people have points, but here's my kind of question is, and again, you know, we are blessed because we have access to our house and it's Toronto, so there are places to get coffee and all that. So we do have a situation here, but to talk to that, like, what's the minimum that we would actually need to run a PodCamp in this building?
What was the minimum the 1 year where we had no money?
The low one, it was about less than $5,000, but that was
okay.
The absolute.
That's no, but that's what I'm curious about.
Like,
so that's the floor,
no coffee,
right?
no extra rooms,
no, because
no party.
Yeah, it was just under.
Yeah, but that's okay, right? But that's sort of the question. So if that's the floor.
No free parking.
Well, that's the other thing, right? Yeah. I mean, the Imperial, you guys don't pay for anything there, right?
On the Friday night, we didn't pay anything.
No, right? And I mean, everybody has a great time, and nobody goes, "Oh my God, they didn't buy us free drinks at the Imperial."
Yeah.
Whatever. But I'm just curious because I think, you know, to Eden's idea or any other ideas, just to have a sense of what the floor would be, right? So if that's how you're going to do it, and you set a floor of $5,000, could you get $5,000 out of that idea? Yeah, maybe. I think so. Like, you know, or whatever else, right? So I'm just kind of trying to set it in those terms. So as we're talking about it, then we kind of all know what we're talking about.
How many people did we have here this year?
I think we had something like 800 registrations, maybe 700, and I think 400 showed up last time I looked.
Okay, so even if we charge like $10, $20 a person, that's...
Yeah, there is a result. We've surveyed on that question, if you would come to PodCamp if we paid, and it was a huge negative reaction.
Yep.
Like, we would probably lose half the audience for sure.
But then you only get half the registrations.
Yeah.
So maybe only
that's the half that
really
would come in.
are the ones that would pay anyway.
Yeah, and I think it's a discussion we'd have to have with Ryerson too, because I think they're interested in their students being able to come, so we'd have to figure out how
There's
we're
the
gonna-
law of 2 feet, right? There's the law of 2 hands, so helping out.
Yep.
And there's the law of your own wallet, right? It's.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Just on that point.
So yeah, Ruby said.
Just on that point, there's also the law of 2 days. If there's a floor,
Yeah.
Saturday is the floor.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good point.
It doesn't cost us any extra to run Sunday.
Well, that being said, there's still people, there's still timing, there's
Yeah.
people going, well, I can come on Saturday, my personal schedule precludes Sunday, whatever the reasons are. So having a session on a Sunday, I can't make it on the Sunday. So if there's a floor between Saturday and Sunday, between one day,
sure.
The law of 2 days, it's the
Yeah, that's
Saturday.
interesting.
Saturdays are a big day.
Just to return to an earlier point, is the United Nations, for completely other part of my life, they put on forums and things, but they don't charge because it's the UN. They're not supposed to charge. One way that they figured out something is they call them side events. Outside of the venue, but close enough, walking distance, literally sometimes across the street, a big corporate sponsor, a university, the country, another country will do that. What does the UN get out of it? They say, we will include your listing in our official program. So that may be a way to get into, and they literally call them official side events. You have to apply and money and.
That model has killed a couple other conferences in the US.
Okay.
Oh really?
Yeah, like Blogger.
Oh really? Is that what happened to Blocker?
Well, that's one of the problems. I was there 2 years ago as a client. That was one of the things that killed it. There were these side events that became, there were side events that were official, and then there became all these unofficial ones because sponsors thought, I can spend $5,000 instead of $10,000 and do my own event. I'll pop in for a day and sneak out before they get too pissed off at me. And then I was on the trade floor with people, and we weren't getting the conference attendees. We were getting all these people from the surrounding area.
Yeah.
Who said, I can pay $50 to get in and get all kinds of free shit if I hang out on the trade floor for an hour, or $25 or whatever. And we weren't getting the real conference attendees. And eventually, like, it helped to, I think Blocker's still around, but it's not what it used to be. And it imploded for a year because this had been going on for 2 or 3 years, and they had trouble getting the real sponsor.
So you had on the sign up the sort of donation track. Has there been any consideration to maybe before PodCamp doing some kind of like crowdfunding campaign?
Yeah, so that's another thing. So crowdfund specifically for the party or something like that. Or
like, if there's enough individuals here that may chip in, you know, throughout the year to make this happen. Like, I would rather. It's important to me that PodCamp is free, and I would rather pay money so that it can
be free, yeah,
but not to make it a ticket, you know.
Yeah, that's kind of why I did the whatever.
That's why I bought a T-shirt and all that
Yeah,
because I said, yeah, I know where that money's going,
People outside of this group are paying for that stuff. Like, I know all about.
This is the group that donated.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, but that's always kind of gonna be like, and that probably can't be the only thing, but that could be part of it, right?
The psychology of it changes when you do a campaign. Like, there's a guy contributed to his Patreon like the last year and a half or whatever, and he used to have just a blog with like a PayPal donation thing on the bottom, and he wrote these tutorials for programming, and the rule was when, you know, every time I get to X number in donations, I'll do a new article.
Yeah.
And I would go back to his blog, and no one was donating. I wasn't donating because no one was donating, and there were no new articles. And then Patreon came out, and he changed. He changed the way that it worked, and it sort of in your head it changed. It wasn't, you weren't just throwing into a PayPal donation thing. It was like its own campaign, and now he gets, you know, X money per month, and we get a
Is
tutorial.
anybody using Patreon for conferences?
It's interesting.
I'm sure.
But the crowd. I was just going to talk to crowdfunding model because crowdfunding model is kind of what you did with the T-shirts anyway.
Yeah.
So it's really just those are your incentives on the crowdfunding, and that sets your level. I mean, you almost did that, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
guess so.
in a way, right? Yeah. So I think that, you know, is an opportunity, and I don't know, but I think that there's a ceiling on that you're probably close to hit already. So you're right. These are the people who are going to do that, and you know, maybe a few more people who want a T-shirt. I don't know, but
I'm just wondering, just because, and I don't want to, you know, it's not like open your books or whatever, but.
Well, we have to have a book.
Yeah, no, they should.
But you were saying, yeah, but I mean, I've been an organizer and I've seen numbers. I don't want to see
That's
that.
right.
You don't.
It's kind of but you're saying the space initially was provided by Ryerson, right?
Yeah.
Is that still the case?
Yep, and we pay about $2K for the large rooms at the end of the hall on the second floor.
Okay.
Which we haven't always used.
No, sometimes we use them, sometimes we don't. It depends on, you know, what we sort of think is going to be attendance.
So we could
Because,
scale
yeah,
that
like,
back.
as opposed, like I guess I was shocked, and you wouldn't believe what happened next. But the 5K number is actually jarring to me. Like, if the space, I mean, take out those 2 rooms, you're down to 3K.
I don't know. Did we
All
have?
right.
I don't know if we had those rooms when we did the 5K year.
So, like, I mean, like, I'm just wondering, what is that 5K? Like, what is it? What is it?
You have to pay for security.
Okay.
There's
Rentals for like the chairs and stuff.
There's some stuff.
Okay.
Audio equipment.
Okay, so it's rentals and all that
yeah.
stuff, right?
But there's still costs associated with the building. The space is technically free, but there's other things. Right?
Okay.
Yeah, they have a core set of rooms that RTA controls that they they'll give for free.
And I think there's less, and I think there's less now than there used to be, because we used to get a lot. I feel like we got more rooms for free.
Well, yeah,
I think
there's another room on the side of this wall that's just full of computers that we don't use
That's
now.
that's
and,
not. Yeah.
There's a couple rooms that have been reconfigured that no longer are really viable for sessions.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I really think it's time to get rid of the free food and the free beer.
You're gonna say that?
See,
This
Ken's
guy-
saying it.
this
Ken's
guy
saying
every
it's
year
time.
harasses me all year until the next podcast.
I want the party.
It's,
but the food, if the kitchen was open, people would order what they want,
Yeah,
and everybody happy. There's
Yeah.
no need for everybody racing up. It's a
Yeah.
pig fest. Just get rid of it.
Yeah,
It's not needed.
the issue for the Ram and the Rise, we have to have a minimum amount of expenditure there because they're not open on Saturdays.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, but if there, look,
we'd have to
one drink
But
ticket
there's a-
might get people in. Free beer. The prices are so cheap there anyway. It's a fabulous place. The idea is just to get enough people.
To his point, they may not open if you don't have a minimum spend, but it's Toronto. There's lots of bars. I mean,
if at the very least, if it doesn't make enough money from beer sales, then PodCamp has to contribute, make up the difference. But I'm sure you can easily do it with people going in. They have a good selection of beer, like wine.
Yeah, I mean, Rick can probably speak to that better because he's the finance guy.
Well, I mean, I think people will realize it's a great party.
Yeah.
This is still, I think it's really important to have that gathering at the pub.
Yeah.
it's
But don't need the food. Don't need
What
all
is
the
the
free
minimum
beer.
spend? Do you know?
If the
I think we have to spend like
2,000 or 2,500.
25 to
Oh,
3,000
So
we have to
that's
spend
50%
minimum.
of that,
Okay.
5K, right? So.
No, the year with
No,
5K
no.
we didn't have a party.
that's no party.
Oh, okay.
5K is to open the rooms and get people here.
Yeah.
So that's,
Is there not a Legion or something around?
sorry, what?
Is there not a Legion or something around?
It's Toronto. There's tons of places you can get for free. Like if you want to, there's
Most Legion halls will throw out like.
no. There is. There's
bar.
lots of places. There's lots of places walking distance from here. I can give you a list of places.
Okay.
A bar. You want a list of bars? between me and Ken, we got a list. We got a
I
list
was
of
gonna
bars.
say, I mean, the
Castle has a
the
great
challenge.
like upstairs
Yeah.
space.
There's
you can just
spaces.
book and-
Yeah.
There's lots
I mean,
of
the
spaces.
challenge
Nobody
is
close.
Toronto. A lot of the bars
Oh,
want a
okay.
deposit or a minimum spend. And because I have for other things I'm trying to think, but
Yeah, they have to pay a staff to be there and do
Yeah.
stuff, so they want to make money.
yeah.
Like that's what they're there for. They're there to make money.
Yeah. If
And
we
if we're
weren't
not giving the
downtown,
money,
it wouldn't be the case, but it's just.
But that said, there's places that if you give them a reservation and give them a sort of round number, and maybe you have to buy some food or maybe you have to do something. But they're like Say What would do that.
I remember
Well, we had the first party at Say What.
Right, and Say What, and that didn't cost anything.
I remember the first year or two though, we'd say we're just going to show up, or we'll try to book a room, and they wanted a deposit. So I used to go and like camp out early at a bar to try and get space,
Right.
and then we would cram like 30 people into a space for 12 people. It was
Well, that was
yeah.
That was actually part of my little 09 meltdown was about like parties and space and all of that. And remember, I basically just said, I'm gonna go and get chicken wings at St. Louis, and if you want to come have chicken wings with me, I can come and have chicken wings with me. And if you don't, go somewhere else. But that was, and I put that on the wiki, right? And then we started all doing that. Like all the organizers were doing little things. And I mean, that's kind of cool too. Like it doesn't have to be everybody in the room together at all times. There can be other things that can happen, right? And the Imperial, you know what? The Imperial is great. I mean, you can go up to the Imperial, and why not go there on Saturday as well? Like whatever. I mean, there's.
We've asked them if they would have us on Saturday, and they were
Were they
not
not?
happy
Oh, all right.
with having us there Because
Okay.
it would be too many people for the space. We would just take it over, but we wouldn't be paying them any money.
Yeah. But I mean, if people are buying beer, anyway, there's places. I think that could be worked out too. I mean, I think that could all be worked out because you didn't really have a party.
I mean, the ramp works perfectly. It's walking distance.
But there's a minimum. There's a minimum
But
spend.
we could make that. I'm sure you could make that.
Maybe.
The problem is they can't really chance it.
You have to commit
Yeah,
to it.
because people
You
show
have to
up
commit to it.
expecting free
Yeah,
food
minimum's
and
minimum,
booze,
right? Yeah.
and now you're charging them, so you don't know if they're gonna charge
Yeah.
show up, so are you gonna
But
pay that $20?
listen, that could finding a place for people to buy beer can be solved. I guarantee it can.
One of the things a friend of mine did, he organized it was like a community political event at the Transact, and he set up a Twitter bar. They had to reach a certain number of bar sales, so in order to help reach that, he set up a Twitter account where they could order drinks from the bar on Twitter and have it delivered. They had numbers on the table.
That's my business model. Christ.
And,
I don't know what I'm doing. That's what I should be doing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write that down.
Every time he had the mic in his hand, he was just like, remember Twitter bar? Remember Twitter bar. Order more drinks. So people are just getting hammered at this community political discussion event with like Adam Collins there speaking and like, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think just to bring it back into
Yeah.
Like for our team, like we don't really have any interaction with any of the people that started PodCamp, and it doesn't seem like anyone is maintaining PodCamp anymore. Like they don't have a website with like the rules listed on it. The wiki isn't like maintained. It's hard to find.
Wow.
I don't think there's anyone steering the ship really. So.
There's still a legal entity though.
Whitney would know. Whitney would be so. Whitney Hoffman would be the person who would know, and Whitney's still. She was liking stuff on Facebook last night, so she's still paying attention to some level. And anybody who knows Whitney, she's great. She's like if you called her up and said, "I'm John from Toronto, I'm doing PodCamp," you'll talk with her.
We can connect you for
absolutely.
Sure, yeah.
So
she's been to Toronto PodCamp.
Yeah,
no, the first couple of years.
She's still legal counsel for the foundation, right?
Yeah, and so there is a foundation. So this is like I think a lot of people don't even know. So there's a legal entity, PodCamp, whatever. PodCamp Foundation, and it's her, Brogan, and Penn, I think, right?
Yeah.
Are the officers of it, and yeah, it's something. And I mean, I guess it's an American thing versus whatever. I don't even know. She's a lawyer too, so she could help you with that part of it. Or she's a lawyer, or she's and so yes, I mean, it would be a question to say what's going on with PodCamp, and is it like,
and is it able? Is there a room to change something, or is there like
that's
different spaces moving? Because it's been static since what 2010.
Yeah. So as a legal entity, there were certain requirements to be able to use the PodCamp name and model.
And they changed them willy nilly, but that's just my opinion.
Well, there's kind of some looseness in there, but so to use the name, we've had to comply with certain things. One of them is having the books open, so if you want to see the finances, you can see the finances, that sort of thing. But
one of them was being free, but
one of them was being free, and
they just pinged that out when it was annoying to them.
Yeah.
I'm still kind of pissed off about that.
I read that really carefully, and there was technically nothing that said you couldn't charge for it. It was just the expectation of most people that it wouldn't be charged for.
Well, I think it was when they incorporated it as a legal entity that they didn't put it in, but they put it in the rules. So I'm sure you're right. I'm not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV. So
Believe me, I went over that agreement a lot.
Yeah.
That brings up a point is that the event here still has momentum, but it's still a good. I'm not, you guys are the branding experts, and maybe if something about PodCamp at this point doesn't fit what's happening here, maybe not calling it PodCamp is a solution, because then you can do what you need to do for Toronto and for the audience that's here, and not be bound by rules that were written 10 years ago in Boston at a bar. That maybe don't apply.
Penn actually said that. Penn said that in the past about podcasts. If they don't want to be like podcasts, they can call something else.
But then it becomes a new event, and then it kind of feels like you've got to start.
Well, it could be the event formerly known as PodCamp.
Right.
like we're the band formerly known as Uncle Seth.
And you know what? I don't think that the foundation isn't going to come after anybody at this point, right?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. So it's PodCamp Toronto is its own thing.
Yeah, I guess we're more worried about people like yourself coming after us if we change something that's not in the rules.
Well,
so you'll be the first people to call us out on it.
That's not a that's just the.
I wanted to say,
I'm hearing a lot of like complicated solutions and reworking and everything, but I wanted to suggest like, want to see two things. That I'm not sure about the linear nature of complaints. If you charge $5, you maybe get a lot of complaints. If you charge $10, you get even more. But maybe if you charge $50, you get no complaints. Because you get a different type of person. It's not like a nickel dime pinching cheap person. Right?
I'll complain about $50.
I'm saying I'm not an event organizer, but if you ask a professional conference organizer, they can tell you what is the level of paying that has the fewest complaints. And if you charge $300, you probably get 0 complaints because you get like CEO people.
Oh no, that's true. Then you really change the nature of the event, right? And $50. It's funny you mentioned $50 because $50 was the amount. No, but it's funny you mentioned that specific number because that was the number that Boston PodCamp 3 charged, and that did change the nature of their event. And I actually didn't go to Boston after that, but I know talking to people, it's like it's really different now. It's
probably
really
the
different.
business people.
The other point I wanted to make is that we live in an online world. We all know online. We have spam problems, right? For example, Apple charges $100 for the deaf program a year. They do it to avoid people like frivolously signing up for developer accounts. They don't need the $100. The fact that we have 800 people sign up and 500 people show up is a spam problem. It's not right. Those people should be showing up, I think.
I don't think it's a spam. No, I think people intend to, but it's sort of a reality of human nature.
Well, it's like Facebook too. Like you sign up for any sort of Facebook event, it has like 20% of the people show up. That's the nature of online events.
But if you charge money, the spam problem is
it's also human nature. It's like, oh well, I've got these other things happening. We're all really busy, and this thing took over, and it's like I can't make it.
Well, and I will go back to my oldest argument, which is who the hell cares how many people actually show up, as long as they're here and engaged. Like now, I get it for room planning and for some of that stuff, but at a level, like you got to have a certain number of rooms, a certain number of sessions. So, and I mean, this was right back to my frustration with 09, which was people were frightened about the number of people that we were going to break down the Rogers Communication Center or something. I don't know. To this day, I don't kind of understand it. And then it wasn't that many, and people were pissed off because it wasn't as many. I don't get all of this. It's like, let the thing be what it's going to be. Because nobody really cares other than the people who are organizing it. Nobody's looking around with 300 people here who wasn't involved in organizing this thinking it's a failure or a success or whatever based on that. That's coming from marketing and from other places. Now, I get that there's other pressures on sponsorship and organization, things like that, but I think those can be managed. I just feel like that's an artificial thing of, we got to have a number and know what the number is, and if we don't know what the number is, what's going to happen?
There have been podcasts with 11 people.
I was going to say, there's 12 people.
How many do you have in London?
Oh,
300.
More. It turned out well.
Was it that hot big?
Even the first year was like 200.
Oh, was it that big? I thought it was under 100 the first year.
PodCamp Michigan though was like 20 people though.
Maybe that's what I might be thinking Michigan. I'm sorry, I might be thinking Michigan.
Ottawa was 11 people.
Yeah.
Ottawa was small. Okay, that's what I'm thinking.
Michigan was like what, 35, 40 people.
Okay.
But
I'm thinking of Ottawa.
We actually left. We did walk down.
Well, we went into a breakout room and started drinking.
Fuck yeah.
If I can suggest something, there's another model in the city that we can at least look at. The Festival of Festivals, which becomes TIFF. And it's evolved. So earlier in the discussion, when you're talking about the floors, one of the floors is the calendar.
Sure.
So this moment in February, we can change the name. We're still going to come. We'll still participate.
Yeah.
So nobody remembers that TIFF at year 41 in year 0 was the Festival of Festivals. And it was a one-off thing. And I remember the tickets used to be $2 and you lined up and they sold you these little photocopies and it's like, I can photocopy that. They were just...
It was like smaller than Fringe. It was like super small, right?
And it is to where it is now. So if it's something else in 2017, then that's year 11 of whatever it is. If it's not here, we're still going to meet whatever and we'll figure it out.
But that's got to be a little bit organic, right? That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen from 16 to 17.
Correct. Well, I hope not. But
I mean, I don't think you could. I don't think you could force it, and I don't think it could evolve that. But to your point, it could and maybe should evolve, or maybe not. I mean, I get your kind of point.
Festival of Festivals used to be at Yorkville.
Yeah.
And the theaters are gone, and they migrated south. And
well, and things can move and change for sure. But I guess the question is that is there pressure on a need to change it? I get what you're saying because that's a giant, huge success story, and I feel like it's kind of rare because most little, it's a Toronto story, but it's not. There's lots of grassroots festivals in Toronto that didn't become TIFF, right? There's lots of grassroots festivals everywhere that didn't become TIFF.
There's a lot of unconferences that didn't become PodCamp.
Well, yeah, but let's talk about it. I mean, PodCamp isn't a giant success story in the sense of having grown and grown and grown and grown, or having. The only giantness of the success story of PodCamp writ large for me is that at one point, like I said, there was a PodCamp every week, and that's kind of contracted. And maybe that'll happen again because it sounds like there's more PodCamps happening again in the last couple of years. But that's about PodCamp, the movement overall, right? And that again, I think will happen organically because if somebody in Nairobi wants to start a PodCamp, awesome, right? And we don't really have much influence on that or anything other than to say, hey, that's awesome, guys. If Toronto changes, or if the places around Toronto change, if it's in Hamilton or London or somewhere else, the people in this room are the people who are going to impact that in some way. And I guess the question is, what's the problem we're solving there? Is it that we need more little PodCamps or one big pod? Like, I think we got to kind of look to our own needs, and I don't know that it needs to. I get the TIFF analogy at a level, but at another level, I'm like, yeah, but if PodCamp became TIFF, I wouldn't care. You know what I mean? Like
just to look at it, it's just another story that's what
yeah.
Is there something we can?
There was a continuity beyond the name, I think, is what you're trying to say.
Yeah. Silly thing, but you have a database of all these people who registered for this event, right? Why don't you do a survey on SurveyMonkey? Take some of the ideas that are here, ask the community what the community wants. Then you don't have to do what they've asked, but as a committee, you can sit back and use that for points of discussion.
Well, yeah,
you want to report the results, but you can sit back and look at what they've done that seems viable.
Yeah, that's what we do every year. Like the town hall we have at the end of every year. That's sort of a way to gain feedback, and we do send out a survey where people, complain about certain things. And we try and address that. But
There's a severe bias to that, and also like what is. I'll be freaking blunt.
Please.
I really don't give a shit what most of those people have to say. the 30 opinions in this room matter, I think, far more than the results of that fucking survey, because these people, people here are the ones that did it forever. We're the founding, we're the founding of that community. Well, other people that, because I'm not gonna, for starters, I'm not gonna get the survey, and I'm not gonna respond to the survey. Well, I mean, I might because I think because I want to skew it a little bit.
But it's good to know if you're right. If you have an idea here, that's a way to test it out, to see if people like that.
I do feel though that
that's actually what I'm saying is I for the most part I think for most of those, because I've actually sent out some of those surveys and stuff.
Okay.
For the most part, like that's not what I wanted. That's not what I think the core the real diehards for PodCamp. Well, they're not responding to that.
For the diehards, or is it for the?
I told John on Friday night, I'm like, fuck everybody else. Just do it the hell that we just. I said, go back to what we used to do back in 2009, and if it's us and 100 people, at least it'd be us and 100 people that we all like show up. I really don't want them.
But I would sort of agree with that, but I would say it a little differently, which is I think I feel like what happens with that survey is you don't get big ideas, you get small ideas. You get people saying you should have the coffee over here. Yeah. And I like the idea in principle, but I kind of agree with what Bill's saying, which is the people who really care, we're going to hear from. You know what I mean? And the people who are going to respond to that survey with like, where was the t-shirt was the wrong color and that kind of stuff. Like I feel like that's the kind of stuff.
Ask those kind of questions.
Yeah, no. But I think if you try and ask big questions, you may not get big answers anyway.
You have to decide, and it's not clear to me from here.
If you ask people,
fair enough.
If you ask people in the survey, do you want to pay $20 to come next year? They're going to say no. But if you just charge $20 next year, I think everybody in this room would come. A lot of people will come. It would solve a lot of the problems. It's bam, it's there. There'll be a party that night. They'll get one drink.
And part of my point is,
but let people pay the $20. That's nothing, and people would come, and you'd know the numbers who paid. You're going to be closer to that number. It'd be easier to book the rooms. You could charge at the door $30 if somebody wants to leave. You could give it free to Ryerson students if they insist on that.
I'm sure if your survey question said, here for next year, because of the funding situation, here are two options. We're going to have sponsored sessions, or you can pay $20 and there's no sponsored sessions. guess where that's gonna go?
$20, absolutely.
There's no, everybody's gonna say, well, here's my $20.
But here's the curious part. As an organizer,
May actually be interesting. It's an interesting question. Yeah.
But as an organizer, you get to set up a framework for what you think will give a conference that you want. You get to choose that as an organizer. And if somebody doesn't like it, they got two options: not come, or there's no reason you can't. Somebody couldn't have another PodCamp forum or another event of any sort of.
But we're I feel like as we're saying all this stuff, we're like taking too much ownership, and it goes back to the original premise for me, which is we should be, well, yeah, no, we don't, and it should be self-organizing, and there should be a level of, I'd like to get back to that part of it, and get back to the part of it where the people who show up just do the thing that they want to do, and I think, like, that to me, again, is again, I think the floor is, you get enough rooms for people to do the shit that they want to do, and they show up and do it, and if they don't want to do the things that we defined 10 years ago, good, like, the world has to change, right?
Everybody's bitching about all of the other things, and we're not getting any of that.
One of my favorite.
The other thing I think is really important is that I know you guys might have heard some negative stuff. I have not heard a single negative thing about what's been going on here. And the negative things always have a hugely disproportionate weight to the good that you guys are doing. So just, you know, haters gonna hate, right? Right? So you guys, this has been awesome.
Great.
So
Thank you.
I think that it boils down to who's the community. Is it the people making the decisions, or are you doing it for the larger group, and then that'll help guide how you decide to proceed after.
Everybody should be able to make decisions somehow, but I think you're right. Yeah.
They ran out of milk yesterday, way too early. There you go.
But that's
that's success.
You know what? But nobody across the street to buy a carton of milk.
I'm more joking about that because we all need coffee. When you guys come here early at 6, you know. Of course. I work for companies that sponsor a lot of these events, and we get like 50,000 requests a day. Some of the events ask me, "Oh, can you give us $25,000?" Okay, but I need like 6 months in advance. When you had I spoke yesterday, I had the room full. I love it. Everybody was happy. But when it was on the 16th, it was the deadline when you guys decided the schedule or something. To a lot of sponsoring companies that plan a year in advance, saying if you ask $25,000, I'm going to give you something. If you give me the full details 5 days before, 4 days before, it's going to be impossible. So you know, WordCamp has a WordCamp Central. These are the rules. Play with them. You know, PodCamp seems more decentralized.
It's meant to be an unconference, and originally it was basically. I mean, we did some organizing in advance of sessions, but literally, if Saturday night you got talking and said, "Why is there no session on RSS feeds?"
Brendan Virgil used to do that all the time. You guys used to do sessions like all the time.
It was meant to be open and
Saturday night, Sunday morning, right?
Yeah, this is what I love about PodCamp.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's one of my favorites, and actually. On the way here, I got a speeding ticket because I wanted to be on the first session was speeding a bit too much. But to a lot of the sponsors that can give you the money and whatever, like, I think it was you who said Tim Hortons doesn't care if something else have free coffee.
Yeah, like
but
sponsorship
sometimes
isn't going to be.
Last minute. If I was in one of my previous employer, they would want to know everything just 100% by September of 2015. You know?
Do you know what's so funny? Of course, and of course, this is me saying this. Of course, is I feel like it's way too organized now. I want to go back to that crazy wiki and to all that stuff, and that's just me because I loved the chaos of it.
I'm not seriously upset, but I was a little bummed, and I understand how you guys had to change how the sessions were scheduled or whatever. But I was a little bummed out when it was like, oh, we gotta submit a form and go through this process that doesn't allow for. What I used to do was planning it on Sunday or Saturday night. And it was a necessity, I understand, but it did kind of bum me out.
So just like how we used to do it was we had a wiki and we had slots and you put in shit and then Connie and I would spend the rest of our day reformatting the wiki because it all break. and that was our lives. And it was and you know, I would alternate between laughing and crying because I loved just seeing shit show up. And you and Virgil were two guys that I remember always would be like, Virgil was the best for this. You'd be talking to Virgil on Saturday night, and Virgil would go, And he would have, I remember he did this at Say What once, because we had Wi-Fi, and he went in and he's like, I'm doing a session on that tomorrow at 9 or 10, whatever. And it's like, okay. Like, that's
there's a way to accommodate what both sides need.
Yeah.
And so in Drupal, in the Drupal camps and stuff, we have Birds of a Feather session. And it's basically they're dedicated slots in the conference schedule to basically allow for this sort of stuff to happen.
I like that.
So you pick one sort of block each day to do Birds of a Feather, because I could have done one on how we set up our cooperative co-working space, and there's all sorts of ways that you can apply this into.
And they did that at ASCE, which is the American Association Management Conference, and that's a giant conference. They have like 25,000 people at that conference, and they did some boss sessions, and they were great.
A lot of big conferences are also incorporating unconference type sessions as well.
Yeah.
And they're hugely popular.
There was a couple of years where we had far more rooms than we actually had people proposing sessions. So there were empty rooms, and it was like people just showed up and did things.
Yeah.
It was
Campfire.
awesome.
Was it 2008 or 2011?
Yeah, we just all sat around. The very first year I think I arrived, and it was like, I want to learn about Yahoo Pipes. No one was talking about Yahoo Pipes, and I grabbed somebody. Somebody mentioned they knew all about it, and I'm like, "Can you do a session on that tomorrow?" And they're like, "Okay." Yeah. Was it Will? Was it you?
Was it you? Yeah, of course it was you.
Will was the one guy that kept Yahoo Pipes.
Of course it was you.
He was the user.
Well, and then I was using it because I was that session. Unfortunately, I have to run, guys. I have a volunteer shift I have to get to.
Oh yeah.
Bye. We'll miss you.
Yes.
Bye. Yay.
Keeping
PodCamp together.
Have fun.
What time is it?
It's 12:47.
Ah, good.
It's lunch.
What, lunch isn't free?
I was told there'd be Subway.
Oh, by the way, I don't know if everybody knows this, because I don't think it, like, I was talking to people last night, it's like, all those sandwiches got wasted one year, and I'm like, no, those sandwiches didn't get wasted. Me, Julian, and Brogan took them to Second Harvest, and I think that got lost in the stories somewhere, but none of those sandwiches got thrown out. So just if anyone was worried about the sandwiches in 2008 that they got thrown out, they didn't get thrown out. They went to some hungry guys at Second Harvest, so just so everybody knows that. I'm just clearing the record there.
But you know what? They won't take it anymore.
No, now they won't. Now they won't, yeah.
Two things. One, I'd love to help out next year, so I want to connect with you guys and figure out how I can do that from that. Second, I was sort of inspired to do something down in Niagara, kind of like this.
Yeah.
August, we're basically 6 months, so on the opposite end of the calendar here.
Sure.
I'm going to do what we're calling a pod crawl. So we're gonna grab a bus. Right? You guys are gonna come down to Niagara. Niagara has all sorts of microbreweries and wineries and distilleries. So we're gonna pick 8 of those places. We're gonna pick 8 of those places. We're gonna do 8 talks. You're gonna be exposed to the quality products of 8 different establishments. A whole bunch of food. I have no idea how we're going to pay for it yet, but we'll figure it out.
Good luck.
Can I bring my Oast House growler?
Yes. You already know about Oast. This is So that will be one of the places on the list. So
sounds great.
Awesome. So
put me on your list.
And then we do it on.
Yeah.
Every 6 months, there's something going on.
Yeah. No, that's the way to. That's the future of PodCamp right there. I gotta talk to my. Although I gotta. Yeah. Put me on the.
I know. I got a big friend about what makes her not get around.
All right.
Sorry, I wasn't.
Yeah, the food came out at 6, and then every half hour after that.
If we get rid of the shit like that. Because they can have meetings as well.